Picture this. You're tasked with building a skyscraper. Easy enough, right? Now, imagine it weighs nearly 6 million tons and is made of 2.3 million stone blocks, some as heavy as a bus. Oh, and you have to get it done in about 20 years, using little more than some simple copper tools and rope. This wasn't a modern-day thought experiment. This was the reality for the ancient Egyptians 4,500 years ago. The Great Pyramid of Giza, a landmark of human achievement, has puzzled us for centuries. It stands as a silent testament to a civilization that, without modern machines, did the seemingly impossible. So, how in the world did they pull it off? The answer isn't aliens or some lost technology. It's a stunning mix of human cleverness, surprisingly basic tools, and an organizational genius that could give today's corporations a run for their money. Today, we're not just looking at stones. We're uncovering the stories of the people who shaped them, the tools they used, and the incredible daily grind that turned a pharaoh's dream into an eternal wonder. To really get what the Egyptians did, you have to let the numbers sink in. The Great Pyramid of Khufu isn't just big, it's a man-made mountain of stone. It's made of an estimated 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite. The total weight is a mind-boggling 5.75 to 6 million tons. For comparison, that's more than 10 times the weight of the Burj Khalifa. The pyramid's base covers 13 acres, big enough to swallow several football fields. But the size is only half the story. The precision is what really blows your mind. The four sides of the base line up almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions, with an error of less than a tenth of a degree. The stones themselves, some granite blocks weighing up to 80 tons, are fitted together so tightly you often can't slip a piece of paper between them. And all of this was done in what archaeologists figure was about 20 to 30 years. That means, on average, a new block had to be quarried, moved, shaped, and set in place every few minutes of every day for decades. When you stand in front of it, the question isn't just how did they build it, but how was this even possible? It seems to fly in the face of the technological limits of its time. There were no cranes, no steel cables, no laser levels. To find the answers, we have to start with the vision of a king who wasn't just building a tomb, but a machine for immortality. The 4th dynasty of Egypt, around 2600 BCE, was a time of incredible power and wealth, all centered on the pharaoh. The pharaoh wasn't just a king, he was seen as a living god, Horus on earth, who would join the god Osiris in the afterlife when he died. This core belief was the engine driving the whole pyramid project. A pyramid wasn't just a grave, it was a stairway to heaven, a resurrection machine meant to guarantee the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife and keep the cosmic order, or Ma'ati. Pharaoh Khufu, the second king of this dynasty, was the man with the vision for the Great Pyramid. His father, Sneferu, had been a busy builder himself, trying out different pyramid designs and leaving behind the famous bent pyramid and the first true smooth-sided pyramid, the Red Pyramid. Khufu didn't just inherit the throne, he inherited the ambition and the architectural lessons learned from his father's experiments. He picked a solid rock plateau on the Nile's west bank, a spot that was both stable ground and symbolically in the land of the setting sun, the realm of the dead. The man who had to turn this divine vision into stone was likely Khufu's own vizier and nephew, Hemiunu. His statue, now in a German museum, shows a man with clear authority and intelligence. Hemiunu was the chief architect and project manager, the mastermind who would run the largest construction project the world had ever seen. He would have overseen everything from surveying the site to managing materials, logistics, and the most important resource of all, the thousands of people who would work for years under the Giza sun. And the identity of these people is where we have to tear down one of the most stubborn myths in history. For centuries, the story of the pyramids was stuck on one powerful image: thousands of slaves being brutally forced to work for a tyrant pharaoh. This dramatic story, made popular by the Greek historian Herodotus and later by Hollywood movies, is gripping, but it's wrong. Modern archaeology has completely flipped this myth on its head, showing us a much more interesting reality. The pyramids weren't built by slaves, but by a skilled and organized workforce of free Egyptians. The proof is buried in the sand just south of the pyramids. There, archaeologists like Mark Lehner have dug up the remains of a lost city called Hayt al-Ghurab. This was the workers' village, a large, well-planned town that was home to thousands of laborers and their families. This was no slave camp. The city had organized streets, bakeries that could bake thousands of loaves of bread, breweries, and even medical clinics. The most personal proof comes from the workers' own tombs nearby. These weren't the mass, unmarked graves you'd expect for slaves. The workers were buried with honor in modest tombs. Facing the pyramids, they helped build a great privilege. Some tombs even have titles inscribed on them like Overseer of the Masons, showing a clear hierarchy and pride in their work. The workforce itself was a marvel of organization. It seems there was a core group of around 5,000 permanent skilled craftsmen, the masons, toolmakers, and architects who lived in the village all year. This was boosted by a much larger rotating crew of up to 20,000 temporary laborers. These were likely farmers, serving a few months at a time as a kind of national service, probably during the Nile's annual flood when their fields were underwater. This massive workforce was split into divisions. From graffiti left inside the pyramids, we know crews had nicknames, often honoring the pharaoh, like the Drunkards of Menkaure or Friends of Khufu. These large crews were broken down into smaller groups, each with specific jobs. This system made a massive project manageable. These were the people who built the pyramids, a respected, well-fed, and motivated national workforce, united in a project of huge religious and cultural importance. But what tools did they use to tame millions of tons of stone? The toolkit of the pyramid builders was simple but incredibly smart. Since they didn't have iron or steel, they used the materials they had with pure genius. Their main tools were made of copper, stone, and wood. A pyramid block's journey began in the quarries. Most of the limestone for the pyramid's core was cut right there on the Giza plateau. For the harder granite used in the king's chamber, they had to go over 500 miles south to Aswan. To get the huge blocks out, workers carved channels with copper pickaxes and chisels. But copper is a pretty soft metal. The Egyptians used arsenical copper, a much harder alloy, and had to constantly resharpen their tools. They also used heavy pounders made of dolerite, a super hard rock, to hammer at the stone. Once the channels were cut, they'd stick wooden wedges into cracks, soak them with water, and the expanding wood would crack the massive stone free. Shaping the blocks took incredible skill. Masons used copper chisels and wooden mallets to flatten the stone faces. To check their work, they used tools we still recognize today: plumb bobs for vertical lines, set squares for right angles, and levelers for flat surfaces. Once a block was shaped, it had to be moved. This is where one of the most clever Egyptian tricks came in. The huge stones were put on massive wooden sledges. To move these sledges, teams of men would drag them with thick ropes. The secret, seen in tomb paintings and later proven by experiments, was water. A worker would walk in front of the sledge and pour water on the sand, which cut the friction in half and let a smaller team haul a huge weight across the desert. For stones from far away, like the Aswan granite, the Nile River was their highway. Blocks were loaded onto barges and floated to Giza. Recent discoveries have even found evidence of a lost branch of the Nile, called the Khufu branch, and a system of canals that brought boats right to the base of the pyramids, solving a big piece of the transport puzzle. With the stones on site, the builders faced their biggest challenge: how to lift these multi-ton blocks hundreds of feet in the air. This question has led to endless theories and is still one of the most debated parts of pyramid building. The engineering puzzles the Egyptians cracked are just mind-bending, but the puzzle that gets the most debate is how they beat gravity. Before we get into the wild theories on how they lifted millions of tons of stone to the sky, if you're enjoying this trip back in time, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into ancient mysteries. Your support helps us keep digging. Now, let's tackle the greatest puzzle of them all. Lifting millions of blocks, some weighing as much as a bus, to the height of a 40-story building is the central mystery of the pyramids. Without modern cranes, how was it done? Most archaeologists agree on one word: ramps. But what kind of ramp? That's where things get interesting. The simplest idea is a long, straight ramp built on one side of the pyramid. As the pyramid got taller, the ramp would have to get longer and higher. It's a simple idea, but it has big problems. To keep the slope gentle enough to drag stones up, the ramp would have had to be over a mile long. The amount of material needed to build it would have been huge, maybe even more than the pyramid itself, and there's no archaeological evidence for a structure that massive. This has led to other ideas, like a ramp that zigzags up one side, or a spiral ramp that wraps around the outside. A spiral ramp solves the length problem, but it creates new ones. It would have made it nearly impossible for surveyors to keep the pyramid's angles precise, since the corners would always be covered by the ramp. Lately, a more compelling theory has gained ground, thanks to French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin. It's called the internal ramp theory. Houdin thinks they used two ramps. For the bottom third of the pyramid, with the heaviest blocks, they used a short, steep external ramp. At the same time, they built a second ramp inside the pyramid itself. This internal ramp would have corkscrewed its way up, just inside the pyramid's outer skin. This theory solves a lot of problems. It uses way less material than a giant external ramp, and leaves the pyramid's faces clear for measuring. It also explains some weird things. A microgravity survey in 1986 found a lower density spiral shape inside the pyramid, right where Houdin's ramp would be. Plus, there's a mysterious notch high up on one corner, which Houdin thinks was an open corner of the ramp system used to turn the blocks. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project found a large, unknown void above the Grand Gallery, suggesting the pyramid's internal structure is more complex than we thought and might hide construction features. While it's not proven, the internal ramp theory offers a smart and efficient solution to the greatest engineering puzzle of the ancient world. But beyond the big engineering questions, what was life actually like for the men pulling the ropes and setting the stones? Imagine waking at dawn in a mud brick house in the workers' village. The air is already warm, smelling of fresh bread from the huge bakeries that fed thousands. You grab a simple, hearty breakfast of figs, dates and bread, washed down with beer, the staple drink of Egypt. Then you join the river of thousands of people walking toward the massive construction site on the horizon. This was the daily reality for a pyramid builder. Life in the workers' village was organized and communal. The settlement was an early example of urban planning, with long barracks that probably housed the rotating seasonal workers. The permanent skilled workers and their families lived in bigger houses, showing their higher status. The whole city was separated from the sacred pyramids by a huge stone wall called the Wall of the Crow. The state took good care of these workers. This wasn't just kindness, it was practical. A well-fed workforce is a productive one. Analysis of animal bones shows the workers ate a protein-rich diet of beef, sheep, and goat meat, a luxury for common people back then. They were paid in these rations, creating a local economy based on trade. The work was hard and dangerous. Skeletons from the workers' cemetery show the toll it took on their bodies, with signs of arthritis and broken bones. But here's the amazing part. Those bones also show that the fractures were set properly and had healed, meaning they got good medical care. They weren't disposable. They were valuable assets to the state. And beyond the hard work, there was a community. There's evidence of families living together, children playing, and religious life. Workers left graffiti, naming their gangs and showing pride in their work. They were part of something bigger than themselves. As the sun set, casting a long shadow from the growing monument, the workers would head back to their village to share a meal, drink their beer, and rest before another day of building eternity. After 2 decades of non-stop work, it was finally done. The last block was hauled up and the pyramid was topped with a magnificent pyramidion, a capstone that may have been gilded with gold or electrum to shine like a second sun. Then came the final touch. The entire structure was covered in huge, perfectly angled blocks of fine white Tura limestone, polished to a brilliant smooth shine. It's hard to picture today, looking at the rough, stepped core, but when it was new, the Great Pyramid wasn't a staircase. It was a perfect, gleaming white geometric shape, reflecting the sun with an almost blinding light. It must have looked like a piece of the sky had fallen to earth. Over the centuries, earthquakes loosened the casing stones, and they were later taken to help build Cairo. What's left is the pyramid's core, a weathered but still awe-inspiring shadow of its old self. It stands as a monument not to aliens or forgotten magic, but to the incredible power of human organization, cleverness, and pure will. We've figured out so much about the tools, the methods, and the lives of the thousands of people who built it. We know they were skilled, well-fed, respected laborers, not slaves. We have solid theories about how they cut, moved, and lifted millions of tons of stone. And yet, mysteries remain. The exact design of the ramps is still up for debate. Recently discovered hidden corridors and chambers suggest the pyramid still has secrets to reveal. These lasting questions are part of the pyramid's power. They pull us in, spark our curiosity, and make us appreciate the incredible achievements of a civilization that rose from the desert 4,500 years ago. The Great Pyramid is more than a tomb. It's a story written in stone, waiting for each new generation to read.